Today we're going to talk about, before you eat breakfast, the truth about oatmeal, eggs, bacon, and dairy. Now, breakfast is the first meal of the day, but there are some truths and myths about the foods that we all associate with breakfast, specifically oatmeal, eggs, dairy, and bacon. I'm willing to bet that all of you, like me, have had at least one or a combination of all of these before, whether it's your childhood or whether it's the last Sunday that you actually had brunch. And when I was a kid, I always associated breakfast with being the healthiest meal of the day. And I remember growing up, we often had instant oatmeal. This came in a package. We cut it open, we poured it into a bowl, and then just boiled hot water and poured it in, and presto. Right away, we had instant oatmeal. And then we'd actually put a little milk in it, stir it up, and we would eat it usually pretty fast if it wasn't too hot. And then it would actually get us going for school. I often also grew up with eggs. Scrambled eggs were pretty common. And then came this point where researchers said, don't eat eggs, they're not good for your heart. And all of a sudden, poof, eggs disappeared like a magic trick from the breakfast table of my family growing up. Bacon wasn't something that my mom cooked often, but it certainly was something that was found every time we went out to eat breakfast when I was growing up, whether it was a diner, a friend's house, for brunch, wherever we were going for breakfast, it was always bacon, or bacon or sausage. Man, bacon was always tasty, but we always knew that the fat of bacon was probably something that we didn't want to have too much of. And so we always got the warning, even though it was hard to just eat one slice of bacon, don't eat too much of it. And of course, when the bacon was burned on the edge, the crispy bacon, the real crispy stuff, maybe the black stuff wasn't so tasty, but if you broke that off and had the other part, man, it was like really tasty, crunchy and juicy, and it's got its great taste to it. And then of course, dairy, right? Who hadn't heard, depending on your age, that, a glass of milk is the healthiest thing you have. Got milk? You need to have milk if you want to have strong bones. This is the stuff that was on television. It was in advertisements. Even like the phys ed teacher talked about it. And so milk was this idea that milk was dairy, and dairy had stuff in it that would actually be very, very healthy for you. You had to have milk. And of course, as I got older, milk not only went into the oatmeal, or was drank as a cup by itself, but milk went into coffee, for example, or cream. Sometimes when we went out, we always had cream. So what's the truth about these breakfast foods? Are they good? Are they not so good? That's what I actually want to talk about, because there's some really interesting science that will help you before breakfast understand what you're dealing with, so you can make the healthiest choices in order for you to get your day started in the best possible way. Before we begin, let's talk about breakfast itself. So now, a lot of you will not realize that breakfast is two words put together: breaking your fast. That's right. Breakfast is breaking your fast. It's the first meal of the day in which you're breaking your fast. Now, a lot of people talk about intermittent fasting, and I always try to explain that fasting is the most natural thing that we all do, because when we go to sleep at night, we're not eating. And when we're not eating, we're fasting. And so we're always intermittently fasting because we're intermittently sleeping and therefore not eating. So when we do decide to eat after we wake up in the morning, all right, after an overnight of not eating, we are breaking our fast. And that's where the whole concept of breakfast actually came from. Now, fasting is actually really healthy all by itself. And I think this is an important thing to point out before you eat breakfast that you actually need to know. So if you rewind to the evening before, right, you're having dinner, you're loading up for the night. Okay, let's say that you have dinner at 7 o'clock, for example, and you finish dinner at 8. In many places around the world, people eat in about an hour or so. And then when you put your dishes away, you don't eat anymore. All right, you're done eating. That's it. So your blood glucose is going to rise while you're eating your food. Your insulin's going to rise too to chase it. And then it's going to bring the glucose into your muscles and into your fat to store it as energy. So eating food at any time, like dinner, is actually filling up at the gas station, so to speak, in order to be able to have fuel for our engine. And that's the engine of our body, right? So it's very natural. So we're fueled up. And during the fueling part, which is happening at every time during the day that we're actually eating, breakfast, lunch, dinner, we're talking about dinner right now, your body is sensing that you're going to actually have food in it. So your metabolism is hardwired. So when you're actually eating, to time you're eating, metabolism is set. The switch is set so that it is in fuel storage mode. Come on, load them up. Let's fill up the tank. All right. And it is not in fuel burning mode. Let me repeat that. During the day, when you're eating meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your metabolism is set to fuel storing mode, not in fuel burning mode. Think about this. If your car's at the gas station, you're filling up, you're turning off the engine because you don't want it to be burning the gas while you're actually putting it into your tank, right? Besides, it's dangerous. So when we're eating, our metabolism is set in fuel storing mode. Now, what happens is that after a while, after you've eaten and the insulin has gone up and your glucose has gone up and the insulin's taken the glucose back down and stored everything, I don't like to use the words glucose spike or glucose crash because actually for most people, that's not what happens. We have a gradual rise in glucose, and insulin is chasing it, and then insulin brings it right back down. It's like air traffic control, landing a plane multiple times every single day, you know? So that's the best way to think about what happens during a meal, for almost everyone who has generally good health. Now, when the insulin is down and glucose is all absorbed into your storage tanks, into your body fat and your muscles, guess what? Your body is sensing and it says, in the evening time, I guess we're not going to have food again for a while. Now, when the insulin is low for a period of time, your body senses that and switches gears, your metabolism switches gears away from fuel storage into fuel burning. All right? So in the evening, let's say that you don't eat anything after dinner, which is what I recommend. You don't eat anything after dinner. You don't want to keep, having your glucose going up and your insulin going up. After dinner, when you put your dishes away, that's it. Don't eat again. All right? No midnight snack, no taking snacks with you to sit on the couch to watch Netflix or a movie. Just, you're done. All right? Now your glucose goes down, your insulin goes down. Now your body senses that and switches gears like a race car. So think of your body like a Ferrari. When you're done eating and the insulin goes down, you switch gears like a race car into, guess what? Fuel burning mode. So you switch from fuel storing mode to fuel burning mode. And when you do that, your body actually starts to consume and burn down the excess fuel that's stored in your body fat, the fuel that you actually accumulated during the day. And if you overate at any time during the day or the day before or the week before, now is your time to automatically start to burn that extra fuel down. So what happens when you go to sleep, and we're going to get to breakfast in a second, but when you go to sleep and your body's in this Ferrari mode, burning down fuel, all right, when you're sleeping, you're fasting, you're not eating, no more food coming in, your engine is really in that, metabolism is in that fuel burning state all night, all right? This is why when you're sleeping and you're fasting, and when you're fasting, your metabolism in fuel burning mode, you are actually getting rid of and burning extra body fat while you sleep during fasting. And by the way, this is why intermittent fasting works, because the longer you fast, the more fuel you burn. So you will lose weight. You will burn down some of that visceral fat. Your blood sugars will improve. This is actually the principle behind intermittent fasting. But I'm telling you, this is something that's actually completely natural for us. And it's not just a trend that came up recently. We've been doing this for as long as humans been around. Now, we're beginning to understand the science behind it and why fasting is actually good for us. So first, I recommend you don't snack at night. So let's say you're sleeping all night and you're fasting and your metabolism is in fuel burning mode. When you get up, you got to break your fast, right? What I'm telling you, and the reason I'm putting this part right at the beginning of this video, is that if you get up and you actually don't eat right away and extend the period of your overnight fast a little bit, like say an hour, all right? Now you've given your body a little extra leverage, a little extra time to burn down body fat. This is actually how to start moving to optimize your metabolism and optimize the amount of body fat you have. So check it out. I'm going to do the math for you. let's say the night before you eat dinner at 7 o'clock, you put your dishes away at 8 o'clock, you don't eat anything at all, okay? Your insulin is going to go down, your metabolism is going to shift into Ferrari mode, okay? Now your body's going to start burning down fat. Let's say you go to bed at 11 o'clock. Now you've got from 8 o'clock, let's say you put your dishes away at 8 to 11. That's 3 hours of getting into fat burning mode. That's 3 hours. Then you're actually going to be sleeping. Let's say that you go to bed at 11. All right. I never go to bed at 11. I usually don't. But let's say you do and you sleep 8 hours. We know that 8 hours is approximately the optimal time for most people to be able to do all the things that sleep does for us, from metabolism, immune system, brain detox, all the stuff that's good for you during sleeping. Let's call it 8 hours. It's probably between 7 and 9, but let's call it 8. And so during that 8 hours, all right, from 11 to 7 o'clock in the morning, your metabolism in fuel burning mode. So it's 3 hours before you fall asleep or you go to bed. That's 8 hours of actually sleeping for 8 hours. That's 3 plus 8 is 11 hours. Now, 11 hours, you're actually in fuel burning mode, okay? You're optimizing your metabolism. Now, if you get up in the morning and you don't do what our moms all told us to do, right? This is what happened when I was a kid. My mom would say, hurry up and get up and go down into the kitchen and get some breakfast because you need food in your system before you go to school so you can learn. And, we'd have to wolf down breakfast, go hurry up and don't miss the school bus kind of thing. All right. Now, what happens if you don't actually roll out of bed and go to eat breakfast right away? You're not breaking your fast right away. You're actually extending your fast. All right. And this is what I do. When I get up, I don't go to the kitchen table right away. I get up, I'm going to take my time getting ready, brush my teeth, take a shower, get dressed, and then when I'm done, I might check my emails, I might open the door and go out get some fresh air, go for a brief walk. I might open a book and read a book for a little bit, leave it a couple of pages. I might try to catch up with the news. What I'm telling you is that I actually wait. I wait about an hour between the time I get up before I eat anything, minimum, all right? So let's do the math now. 3 hours after putting the dishes away, plus 8 hours oversleeping. 3 plus 8 is 11. Now, 1 extra hour in the morning to extend my fasting time. Now it's 3 plus 8 plus 1. Now it's 12 hours. So just like that, what I've done is I've used half the day, 50% of the day, 12 out of 24 hours with my body in fat burning mode. So before breakfast, before you even think about eating anything, I wanted to let you know there's a way of actually getting your body into good form right before breakfast, before you make any choices, which we're going to talk about in a second. But this is the best way to actually get ready for a great day when it comes to your health is to extend your fast a little bit longer. Okay, so that's how I do it. Okay, when you're ready to break your fast, in other words, have breakfast, what do you want to do to make healthy choices? So let's talk about some of the common foods associated with breakfast and whether they're good choices or not, and what are the truths and what are the myths about them. So I promise you we talk about oatmeal, all right? Now, oatmeal is good for you. It turns out that oatmeal, which is made out of oats, which is a whole grain, is something that actually helps your body in all kinds of different ways. So let's go look at some of those details. First, what's in an oat? Oats, like other plant-based foods, contain natural bioactives. One of them is called avenanthromide, avenanthromide, avenanthromide. I like to spell out some of the complicated words because sometimes people take notes so they can't, and they need to actually write it down. And also beta-glucan, beta-D-glucan, B-E-T-A-D as in David, glucan, G-L-U-C-A-N. So avenanthromide and beta-glucan are actually some of the natural bioactives, 2 important natural bioactives that are found in oats and in oatmeal. Now, I will also tell you that the avenanthromide is also used in skin cream. There is a skin cream called Aveeno. It's very common. If you are a parent, you probably used it to rub on your child's skin when they were young. And guess what? Not only is it moisturizing, but it's anti-inflammatory. All right. And it's anti-inflammatory even when you rub the oatmeal bioactive avenanthromide on top of the skin. So you might imagine what happens when you actually have avenanthromide inside your body. So we're going to talk about that in just 1 second. Now, beta-D-glucan, the other oat-derived natural bioactive, is known as a soluble fiber. And you've probably already recognized that fibers are good for gut health. But I'll tell you, beta-D-glucan is also found in, for example, mushrooms, also found in barley, also found in rye. So think about rye bread, okay? But beta-glucan is also found in oats, as I mentioned to you. Now, researchers in the lab have found that beta-glucan is super anti-inflammatory. And not only that, beta-D-glucan also lowers cholesterol. So it's good for our blood lipids. And it's a source of dietary fiber from oats that actually feeds our gut microbiome. Now, you know the gut microbiome is the 39 trillion bacteria that live in our body. Most of them are actually inside our gut. They're in the tail end of the gut in the colon. And the part of the colon they live is called the cecum, C-E-C-U-M. It's the same area that the appendix is actually located. In fact, we're beginning to recognize the appendix probably has an air traffic control like function with the gut microbiome. That's an area of research that's being worked on right now. So beta-glucan, good for the gut microbiome. Now, I've actually, as a food as medicine researcher, been looking at these bioactives from oats, all right? So one of the things that we've done is to ask if avenanthromide is anti-inflammatory and beta-D-glucan is actually good for healing from the gut perspective, what else can avenanthromides and beta-glucan do? So we've actually took oats and had extracts made from them. So we had pure avenanthromide, pure beta-D-glucan, and we tested it in a model for wound healing. Now, why did we do that? Well, because I can tell you as a doctor, wounds, specifically chronic wounds. I'm not talking about the paper cut that heals right up. I'm talking about people who are in a nursing home with bed sores. I'm talking about people with diabetes who have diabetic foot ulcers that don't heal. People with vascular disease, they've got blockages in their arteries, and so they develop wounds that just don't heal. Now, imagine if you had an injury, a cut that didn't heal, and eventually that could get infected and get really nasty. And in the case of people with diabetes, for example, those wounds can become gangrenous and it can lead to the amputation of an entire leg. So it's an area of research I've been working on for angiogenesis because you need new blood vessels to heal them. It's a whole other story I'll talk about in another video, but I will tell you that I'm one of the experts out there in wound healing. So like other ways that I've studied food as medicine, we've taken a model that's used to test pharmaceuticals or medical devices. In this case, you get a lab animal that has a punch biopsy and you've got a little perfect circular wound that's full thickness, all right? And then you let the wound heal up by itself. And so we know exactly how fast that wound is going to heal. And in another group of animals, we made the same full thickness wound. And what we did in that group is we injected avenanthromide or beta-D-glucan right into the corners of the wound to see what would happen. And I'll tell you what was amazing that we found. And this is like where the light bulbs go off as a scientist, the eureka moment, is we found that the oat extracts would speed up the time it took to heal the wound. In fact, it doubled the rate of wound healing. We didn't think that was actually possible, but in fact, we took normal healthy wounds and we were able to cut the healing in half. When we actually looked at under the microscope at what was actually happening in the tissue, we found that the oats extracts stimulated more angiogenesis, all right, decreased inflammation, so there was much less inflammation, which is really good. You don't want wounds to have inflammation. But the big surprise for us was that the wounds that healed were, wait for it, scarless. Amazing, all right? And so we presented this at a wound healing meeting with other researchers, and everybody was like super surprised that we found this. But this is actually the nature of food as medicine research. We get to discover all kinds of cool things that Mother Nature actually has already packed into foods that we're eating. And when we looked even closer, we found that the beta-glucan actually stimulated stem cells as part of the healing process. Stem cells are part of our regenerative health defense system. So not surprisingly, if you're stimulating stem cells, that's more likely you're going to actually get scarless healing. So this is about oatmeal. This is an extract. I just told you about a research study that we've done in the lab. But now, I want to talk to you about oatmeal that you would eat for breakfast, okay? Oatmeal is a complex carb. It's a good source of protein, and it's got the dietary fiber, as I said, that actually is good for your gut microbiome. So I'm just telling you, oatmeal is actually good for you, but you want to actually get a good oatmeal. So let's talk about the different kinds of oatmeal that are out there. So you probably have seen steel-cut oatmeal, steel-cut oats, or oatmeal from steel-cut oats. And this is probably the best kind of oatmeal to have. You know why? Because it has the least amount of processing. As we know, when you actually have whole foods that are not very processed and definitely not ultra processed, that's the best form for your actually health. So what are actually steel-cut oats? Well, you know, oats are from the plant. They're these little kernels. And what to get steel-cut oats, what they do is they toast the oat kernels, and then they cut them into pieces with a steel blade. All right, chop, chop, chop. And then when you buy them, they're just ready to be soaking in water, like hot water, boiling water. You can cook them. It takes in water maybe 30 to 40 minutes to actually cook them when you're stirring them. All right. But then they actually hydrate. In other words, they soak up the water and they're nice and soft, and you've got some nice oatmeal. This is something you can actually do, by the way, the night before with steel-cut oats. Something easy to prepare for the next day. So then you just open up the fridge and heat some up. All right. So steel-cut oats are probably the best. Next, you have rolled oats. You probably have seen rolled oats. And if you didn't, now I want to tell you, rolled oats are a little chewier than steel-cut oats. And these are actually really good if you're making oatmeal cookies because of the texture, the chewy texture. So what's a rolled oat? All right, it's actually the whole oat kernels that are steamed, and it softens them up, steams them up, and steaming them gives the oats a creamier texture. Then they're flattened out and rolled flat, okay? Kind of like pizza dough, so to speak. And that changes the texture. You get this creamy texture, and then they dry those rolled oats in an oven. As you can tell, it's a little bit more processed than the steel-cut oats. It's still okay, not too processed. But doing that actually changes the nature of the oats a little bit, which is why it starts to get into ultra-processed. But it's got a lot of faster cooking time because it's already steamed. All right, it's basically already cooked. And all you got to do is to heat that in water for maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes max. Quick cooking, because it's basically already cooked oats. And then finally, you've got instant oatmeal. And this is what I told you I grew up with. All right. These are super ultra processed. You know, I would never feed it to a family today. It's the least desirable if you actually have a choice of rolled oats or steel-cut oats. And the reason is that's ultra processed. And these oats are convenient. I got to tell you, this oatmeal is very convenient. They come in packages, and they're labeled in boxes, and they've got, cinnamon. They've got maple flavor. They come with apple pieces. Because they're often packaged in plastic, watch out. This ultra-processed food packaging can actually contain microplastics that get shed in there. So this is another reason I'm giving you the caution that the ultra-processed version of oatmeals are not the most desirable one. Now, these instant oats are pre-cooked, all right? They're rolled flat. They're cut into small flakes. All right, they're super fast to prepare because they're basically cooked and they're tiny, so they actually cook quickly. And they actually then are pre-portioned out into servings. And then additives are put into the package, all right? They might add sugar. They might add artificial flavoring. They might add preservatives. They might add artificial coloring. That's definitely not for the healthiest form of oatmeal. And sometimes they've got little bits of fruit that might be in there, like dried apples. And again, that's dried apples is ultra processed from someone else, some other company that put them in, and they're mixing them all together. And if you look at the side of the package, you'll see all those ingredients that are in there. So definitely check the ingredients and make sure that you're comfortable with everything that you're actually eating. Now, instant oatmeal cooks super fast, like, just a couple of minutes, boom, you're done. They're kind of mushy because they're already pre-cooked and pretty massaged. And so that's not really the ideal way, but they're super convenient. And that's really what led us down this path of eating a lot of ultra convenient food, cheap and fast. But now we know cheap and fast may not be the best way to actually have your breakfast. You'd rather, like every other meal, have a little bit of the less processed food, have the whole food. That version is best. Now, how about making oatmeal? I told you, if you can get steel cut oats, you could just prepare them the night before. So what I do is I boil some water on the stovetop, all right? I add steel cut oats. The directions are on the box or the package. Bring it to a boil. Here's a little pro tip. Add a pinch of salt, because a pinch of salt, not a lot, a pinch, actually that brings out the flavor of the oats. It makes it a little bit more sophisticated, a little tastier actually. And then lower the heat to a simmer. Okay, and simmer it for 20, 30, 40 minutes. Like check it around 20, 30 minutes. Taste it. You got to stir it every now and then so it doesn't burn on the bottom. But that's why you want to simmer. And then cook it. And basically once it's done, let's say it's in 30 minutes, okay, take it off the heat, let it cool for about 10 minutes. And then you can actually put it into a bowl or a jar or a container, hopefully a glass container. Don't use plastic. Okay, you don't want microplastics in your oatmeal. And then you can cool it overnight and chill it overnight, and the water will get absorbed, and the oatmeal will be pretty fluffy the next morning. All right, after you've cooked it, you've rested it, now you're storing it. The water will get even more absorbed. In the morning, you got ready pre-cooked oatmeal. Add a little bit of water to it, put it on the stove and heat it up, okay? Please don't heat it in a microwave. It's a carbohydrate, and the water's mostly been absorbed. You don't want to be creating chemical byproducts of heating carbs. So just add some water, put it on the stove, stir it up. Now you've made your own instant oatmeal, but you've actually done it from scratch the night before. It doesn't take a long time, and it really is great, okay? Now, the other thing is, if you wanted to add a splash of dairy to it, that's fine. We're going to talk about dairy in just a little bit, but I also suggest that this is a good opportunity to use a plant-based milk. Soy milk works well, almond milk works well, oat milks work well, cashew milk, all great options if you want to actually create a little bit of that creaminess to your steel-cut oatmeal that you made the night before. Then toppings, all right? I love adding healthy things to my healthy oatmeal. So here's some suggestions. Berries, strawberries, blueberries. Strawberries have ellagic acid, anti-inflammatory, good for your metabolism. Blueberries have anthocyanins, anti-inflammatory, good for your metabolism. They both cut off the blood supply, feeding cancers. What's not to like about that? They're also good for our stem cells to help us heal. And you can actually add some crushed nuts if you want to use this as an opportunity to add some tree nuts to your oatmeal. Pistachios, walnuts, hazelnuts. Those are all great things to add to oatmeal. And you can add some cut fruit. Now, what I do is I sort of think about cut fruits like kiwi or mango or peaches. Whatever is actually seasonal, you can actually add that on top of the oatmeal. If you want it a little sweet, okay, I do not put added cane sugar, don't put stevia, don't put these artificial sweeteners. Fruit actually is a great way of sweetening it. And if you want to sweeten just a little bit more, add just a touch of maple syrup, all right? Like grade A amber maple syrup, just a little bit. Stir it in there. You'll get a little bit of that sweet hit, and it'll actually work really nicely with the oatmeal. And that's the way to actually have oatmeal. So oatmeal, check, good for you, but you want to choose carefully and prepare the right way for health. Let's talk about eggs. For breakfast, here's what you need to know about eggs. Eggs are a breakfast staple. Eggs are healthy. Thumbs up on eggs. They're a great source of protein. They're also a great source of something called choline, choline. Choline is something that your brain needs to signal. If your brain cell wants to signal another cell, it needs choline to do that text messaging. And eggs are also a great source of bioactives called lutein and zeaxanthin. All right, lutein and zeaxanthin. These are great for aging eyes. They protect your vision against a condition called wet macular degeneration, wet AMD, age-related macular degeneration. Most common cause of vision loss over the age of 60. So if you're watching this and you're over the age of 60, you should be having lutein and zeaxanthin. And AMD, macular degeneration, is something that happens because the back of the eye, called the retina, has a nerve carpet, that's the retinal nerves, and underneath that are blood vessels that are feeding those nerves, right? Now, what happens is that you need the retina, the nerve layer, the carpet. It's like an oriental carpet beautiful oriental carpet of nerves that are receiving light. So light outside enters the eye through your cornea, goes right through all the clear stuff, right through the lens, and gets focused onto the retina. Now you're seeing what I'm seeing. The light's coming right in, and that nerve layer gets turned on, and it sends the electrical signal right to your brain. All right, so your retina is kind of an extension of your brain. It's part of your brain. The blood vessels underneath it are nourishing that nerve layer, the retinal blood supply. Now, in age-related macular degeneration, the wet form, wet AMD, those blood vessels get really, really leaky. And you know what happens when blood vessels start leaking? Well, just like a pipe that's bursting underneath your carpet, you get waterlogged. So the water seeps out, it starts to swell up that carpet of nerve layers. Not what you want. And then if the pipe really bursts, okay, and we're not talking about blood vessel bursting, but we're just talking about leakage. Now you've got a pool of water, and that pool of water underneath the carpet of the nerves of the retina in your eye actually causes vision loss. And macular degeneration occurs right in the center part of your vision, all right? So if I were to actually block your vision just like this, all right, now you can't actually see what's in front of you. You can only see the sides. That is what actually happens with age-related macular degeneration. It's completely black in the middle. You can see in the sides. It's not a good thing to have happen. Now, I work in an area called angiogenesis, how the body grows and controls blood vessels. So out of the work that I've done many years ago, we help to figure out how do you block those leaky, bad blood vessels that are growing that cause vision loss. So if you have AMD, there are treatments called anti-VEGF treatments or anti-angiogenic treatments. And we're treating VEGF as just one of the growth factors. There are multiple growth factors. There's VEGF, VEGF, there's placental growth factor, PLGF, and there's also another growth factor called ANG2, ANG-2. These are all the things that the retinal specialists, the eye doctors, are now using as tools after macular degeneration has begun, wet AMD has begun. You can treat the eye to try to prevent that the leakiness that causes the vision loss. But I will tell you that huge studies have been done on humans and found that lutein and zeaxanthin, those two bioactives I told you are present in eggs, that they actually can lower the risk of macular degeneration. So you don't need to have those injections to treat the disease for vision loss, right? Nobody wants to have this. Now imagine my fists were blurry. That's AMD. So you can prevent that. That's a damn good thing. So a clinical study actually showed that eating just one egg a day can raise your blood levels of lutein, one of those beneficial bioactives, by 26%. And one egg a day can raise your blood level of zeaxanthin by 38% in older adults. So eggs work to raise these two compounds that have been shown in large clinical studies to lower the risk, the chances of actually having wet AMD. That's what makes eggs really good as we get older. Now, the other thing is that eggs are a good source of vitamin A. A is an atom, and that's important for good vision. We need vitamin A in order to protect our eyes as well. So this is one of the reasons why eggs are actually healthy. Now, I'm going to talk about the myth behind eggs being not healthy in a second. The other thing is that eggs are not bad for the heart. They're actually good for the heart. And I've got to explain this because when I was growing up, as I mentioned to you, I used to eat scrambled eggs or hard-boiled eggs. My mom would serve those to me. And then all of a sudden, research came out, and it was everywhere, and doctors were saying, don't eat eggs. Eggs are high in cholesterol. Eggs actually are bad for your heart. This started coming out in the 1970s and continued through the 80s. And I'll tell you, way back then, in the scientific Stone Age compared to where we are today, we didn't know that there was good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. We just thought there was one kind of cholesterol, all right? So that's one of the things we didn't know. And the second thing is that we didn't know how to design clinical trials quite as well as we do now. So back then, where the myth of eggs being bad for your heart and having high in cholesterol and connecting those two happened in clinical studies where they were studying people eating eggs for breakfast, and they were studying whether or not it was connected to or associated with the development of heart disease, right? That's a good thing to study. And what they found when they did sort of a flyby of the results of these studies that, oops, people who were eating eggs had higher levels of heart disease, so therefore don't eat eggs. Eggs are bad, right? That's where this initial scientific finding actually came from. In fact, the American Heart Association said, don't eat eggs, all right? Eggs are loaded with cholesterol. Well, here's a couple of things they didn't know. Number one, first of all, the people who are in this clinical trial, sure, they were eating eggs. But you know what they were also eating for breakfast, the egg eaters? They were eating bacon, they were eating sausage, they were eating chicken fried steak, they were using butter, they're putting cream in their coffee, they were eating all kinds of other forms of saturated fat. So, and those things did cause heart disease, but they actually singled out the eating of the egg as being the culprit. So it wasn't the eggs, it was the bacon, it was the sausage, it was the chicken fried steak, all right, it was the butter. And so here's the thing, eggs don't actually raise high cholesterol. In fact, most people, eggs don't raise bad cholesterol at all. And in fact, some people eating eggs raises your good cholesterol as well. Maybe up to about 15% if you eat eggs on a regular basis. So let me recap. Eggs are good for you. Eggs are a great source of protein. Eggs have those bioactives that's good for our vision, key to saving our vision and preventing a disease called macular degeneration. Eggs, even though they do have cholesterol, they don't actually increase our bad cholesterol. In fact, in some people, it increases our good cholesterol. In those old studies that suggested that eggs are not good for your heart, the problem is that they were studying people who are eating eggs, but they were also eating bacon and sausage and all kinds of other forms of saturated fat. And they ignored that, but they pinned the tail on the donkey of the egg, and that was just not the right thing. They caught the wrong guy, all right? And so now we know that eggs, in fact, are a healthy breakfast choice. Now, like everything that I talk about, there's not black and white, good or bad, good versus evil. The God is in the details. So let me kind of give you some of those details. If you want to eat eggs, be moderate about them. I would say eat eggs about 5 times a week, about 5 eggs a week. You don't need to eat them every day. If you want the best eggs, they're going to have the best bioactives in them. Try eating pasture-raised eggs, all right? If you got a neighbor or a friend who has hens, chickens, get it from them. You're going to actually have a higher levels of lutein and zeaxanthin. If they're raised in a pasture and the chickens are eating what they should normally be eating in nature, the plants that they're eating, the little seeds that they're eating, they actually contain those bioactives, the lutein and zeaxanthin. And they're also going to have higher levels in pasture-raised chickens who lay eggs. In other words, the eggs from free-range chickens that are eating normally things in the pasture, they're also going to be higher in omega-3s. Now, you know that omega-3 fatty acids are a healthy fatty acid. We normally think about omega-3s coming from seafood. They do come from seafood, but there's a plant-based source of omega-3s as well. And chickens who are eating them actually put those omega-3s in their eggs. Now, here's the benefit, healthy benefit. Omega-3 eggs can lower the level of triglycerides in your blood. Now, in the lipids that your doctor is going to measure during a doctor's visit, they're going to look for blood cholesterol and blood lipids. So cholesterol we talked about, there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. How much good cholesterol do you have? You want to have more than the bad cholesterol. You want good cholesterol to be high, you want bad cholesterol to be low, but there's triglycerides, another form of blood lipid or blood fat. And eating omega-3 fatty acids can actually lower those triglycerides. That's really, really important. Another benefit of eggs. So the other thing about eggs, I'll just tell you, is how you cook them, right? That matters. If you're going to scramble eggs, don't scramble them in butter. Use extra virgin olive oil. Now you actually get the benefit of the polyphenols from the extra virgin olive oil. You can even better yet, just boil the eggs, all right? Boiled eggs are something that I really, really love. One of the things that I love to do is I love hard-boiled eggs. So you can use a timer and figure out how long it takes to get the egg whites solid and the egg yolk solid. Crack it, okay, and peel it. And then you can add a little bit of salt to the top of it, and you can just eat it. Take little bites. It's a perfect way to actually have protein, bioactives, and healthy fats for breakfast. Now, if you want a culinary twist, a lot of people don't know this, but if you actually peel your egg, your hard-boiled egg, all right, bite the top off, just like the little tip, the cap. Now you got a little egg yolk. Now, guess what? Take some low-sodium soy sauce, You know, the kind you'd find in the grocery store, and add a little soy sauce to it. Now eat that. Now try that. It's salty. It's got the umami from soy sauce. It's an amazing, tasty way of making an egg really, really delicious. So whether you're boiling the egg or scrambling the egg, if you're actually going to add a little bit of salt, don't add too much salt. If you're going to use soy sauce, don't use too much soy sauce. All right. So eggs on my checklist of good. Just make sure you're preparing them in a healthy way. And don't eat too many of them. Eat 5 a week is just fine. And get the good kind of eggs. All right, next food we're going to talk about, bacon. Now, bacon's a big topic because we all love bacon. Almost everyone loves bacon. I mean, unless you're a vegan or a vegetarian. But let's admit it, even if you're a vegetarian or you're a vegan today, when you were a kid, you probably ate bacon and you probably loved it because bacon tastes great. So let's talk about bacon. What is bacon? Bacon is salt-cured pork, and that says it all. Curing, okay, is processing the meat, and using salt actually puts a lot of sodium in it, and that's really what makes it taste good. It's salty, it's cured, and bacon can be made with different cuts of meat from different parts of the pig, all right? The most common cut of the pig for bacon is the belly. All right, but you can make bacon from using different types of the pig as well. For example, in Italy, bacon can be made from the cheek, the jowl, inside of the jowl of the pig. It's called guanciale. All right, absolutely tasty, super tasty. You ever made bacon with guanciale? Like it's wafer thin. That's very, very tasty. It tastes a little bit different because it's the jowl, not the belly. Then there's pancetta. Another type of bacon made from the belly. Pancetta actually goes through this time-intensive curing process. It's also used in a lot of Italian meals. You'll find it on the recipe. Then there's prosciutto, which also is not cooked generally, but it's cured. And pretty much every meat eater likes this prosciutto, often served with melons and figs. And you eat it cured, they're at room temperature, not cooked. And then in Spain, there's also kind of a Spanish version called jamón, all right, made from a special kind of pig that is also eaten cured, not cooked. Then there's lardo, which is actually just the cured fat on the back of the pig, back fat. All right, so these are different versions of a very similar thing that we associate with bacon. And I just wanted to walk you through that so that you know that bacon isn't just whatever you'd find in the packaged meat section of your grocery store, all right? But let's go back to breakfast bacon, the kind you'd get at the diner or maybe at a Sunday brunch that you might go to. The kind that's really tasty, but not healthy, all right? So I got to break it to you, but something that you probably already know. Bacon is tasty, but not healthy. And let me tell you why. Bacon is high in saturated fat. It's about 40% saturated fat. That's a huge amount of saturated fat. All right. And just 3 slices of bacon has 5 grams of saturated fat. That's about half of what's considered advisable by the American Heart Association for the whole day. All right. Bacon is also super high in salt. Now, too much salt in your body leads to high blood pressure. All right. Also called hypertension. You put a lot of salt in your blood, a lot of liquid gets drawn into your blood vessels. Now you've got your blood volume is high, and that actually causes wear and tear on your circulation. And then your arteries can get hardened. And then the blood pressure is going to be high because you can't relax the blood vessels quite as easily. And that's hypertension, very common in women as well as in men. And it is a silent killer. Hypertension, high blood pressure is a silent killer because you don't always feel it. All right. Most people don't feel when they're hypertensive. Some people do, but most people don't. And being hypertensive, which is actually putting strain on your circulation, the lining of your blood vessels, is increases your risk of stroke and heart attack. All right. It is really, really bad for your heart and for your brain. And again, when you have high blood pressure and you got a lot of salt, it damages the endothelial lining. That smooth lining that is inside your blood vessels. Here's your blood vessel. It's hollow in the middle. Blood goes through it. It's lined by a layer called endothelium. Think about like a saran wrap, a plastic layer inside, and it's really slippery. When it's healthy, it's slippery because it allows everything to flow right through, like an ice skating rink. You know, after the Zamboni, the ice cleaning machine runs over it. It's so smooth on an ice skating rink, you can throw a sweater on it and the sweater will glide all the way to the other end of the rink. All right. Hypertension chops up the ice. It really damages that smooth layer lining inside it. And now your blood vessels are not only hardened, but they actually can stick to things. Things can stick to your blood vessels a lot easier. And that damaged endothelium is a setup for stroke and heart attack as well. So double damage when you have high salt and you have high saturated fats. Now the lipids from your bacon actually will likely stick to the side of the blood vessels, and now your blood vessels begin to narrow. All right. The other thing about high salt you need to know about it is that high salt stuns your stem cells. Your stem cells are naturally present in your bone marrow. They repair us from the inside out. Normally, if you got damage to that lining inside the blood vessels, guess what? Your stem cells get called out of your bone marrow like bees out of a hive, and they go and fix your damaged areas of your blood vessels. All right. They regenerate that lining. High salt stuns the stem cells. All right. It's like bludgeons them, knocks them on the head, brass knuckles. Now your stem cells groggy, not really sure what to do, and you're not actually repairing your blood vessels quite as well. That's not what you want. You're damaging one of your body's health defense systems for your circulation. Here's the other thing about bacon. Not only is it high fat, saturated fat, not only is it high salt, it's also a processed meat. Processed meats, I got to tell you, have a bad and deservedly bad reputation because they are classified by the World Health Organization as a class 1 carcinogen. A carcinogen is a substance that causes cancer. All right. Class 1 carcinogens, tobacco, which we know causes lung cancer and throat cancer, asbestos, which we know causes a type of lung cancer in your chest, a chest cancer called mesothelioma. And guess what? Processed meats also cause different types of cancer, like esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, pancreatic cancer. You do not want to get pancreatic cancer. Very difficult, almost impossible to treat today. Colon cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. All right. Now, what are some of the processed meats besides bacon? Hot dogs, sausages, commercial pepperoni, salami, basically deli meats, the stuff we grew up with, lunch meat. The lunch lady used to give it to us in a sandwich. All right. Those are all processed meats. Now, we don't understand exactly why they actually cause cancer. Some people say it's because of the nitrates or nitrites that are made from a factory that are poured in there for preservatives, for tastiness. But whatever it is, I can tell you that eating processed meats actually is not good for your health and actually increases your cancer risk. So in fact, a clinical study of 470,000 people looked at the intake of processed meats, including bacon, and found that for every 20 grams of increased processed meat that you eat, for every 20 grams, that's not a lot of meat, the 20 grams is about 2 bacon slices, all right? It increased the chance by 18%. So 2 bacon slices, 20 grams increases your chance of developing colon cancer by 18%. Now, that's not one-off, like just eating 2 slices of bacon, but that's a habit, continuously eating that much bacon compared to people who don't eat bacon. That's actually what you need to be able to understand how to interpret that data. So compared to people who don't eat bacon, eating 20 grams of bacon and then another 20 grams of bacon, then another 20 grams of bacon increases your chance of developing colon cancer by 18%. All right. That is not something that you want to have happen to you, and it's completely avoidable by avoiding bacon. Now, here's another thing about bacon that makes it a problem is that when you cook bacon, you're frying it because so much oil comes out. You're essentially frying the bacon. And when you fry foods like bacon, it's generating, the chemical reaction from frying generates something called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, these are PAHs, all right? It's carcinogenic. And another carcinogen is called heterocyclic amines. Heterocyclic amines are HCAs, and they're generating AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And I'm just spelling these out to you because we know exactly what these chemicals are, and they are cancer-causing chemicals that in a lab, when you expose animals to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, okay, to heterocyclic amines or to advanced glycation end products, they actually spark the development of cancer in animals. So when you fry bacon, you're causing some of these chemicals to be generated, and the darker and crispier you fry the bacon, the more of these heterocyclic amines you're actually generating into the bacon itself, right? So that's what I'm telling you. That dark bacon, you might even break off the burnt parts of it and eat the rest of it. But the rest of it also has these carcinogens that occur just by frying. All right, so people ask me, so Dr. Lee, should we avoid bacon at all costs? Like just totally cut it out? Here's my answer, all right? And again, like I practice reasonableness, all right? If you want to avoid all harmful foods for your health, then yeah, stay away from bacon. But like most things in life, some of the pleasures of life aren't so good for us. So if you really, really love bacon and you really feeling sneaking in a few slices for your breakfast, what you need to do is just approach it with eyes wide open. You know that eating processed meats like bacon is damaging to your health. You know that it actually increases your chances for diseases like cardiovascular disease and cancer. But if you actually are generally healthy and you generally eat to improve your body's health defense systems, a couple of slices of bacon aren't going to hurt you. But just recognize it. Do it with eyes wide open. It is not healthy for you. Okay? So let me give you a couple of tips that if you are going to eat bacon, what you might want to do to make it a little bit less unhealthy. Number one, if you cook the bacon, cook it so it's lighter in color. Don't make it really, really dark brown and don't burn it. Now, then you'll actually have fewer heterocyclic amines, fewer carcinogens, less carcinogens to it. Now, less doesn't mean no, it means less. So lighter color of cooked bacon. Number two, here's a pro tip two to make bacon less unhealthy. If you're gonna cook bacon in oil, why don't you cook it in some oils that actually have polyphenols, like a little extra virgin olive oil, all right? So rather than use butter or use vegetable oil or whatever you might be using for cooking your bacon, and by the way, it's true that cooking bacon, you use a lot of its own grease. But guess what? If you add a little bit of extra virgin olive oil into the pan and you heat that pan and put your bacon slices in it, your bacon will cook a little faster, which is good, so you're less likely to burn it, and the bacon will actually absorb some of the polyphenols from the extra virgin olive oil. Now, here's the interesting about those polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil. They neutralize some of the carcinogens that come when you actually fry. Extra virgin olive oils contain polyphenols that neutralize some of the carcinogens that are actually found in cooking bacon. So these are the little pro tips if you're going to eat bacon. The message I want to send you, though, is that bacon is not in any way a health food, but I got to admit, they taste pretty good. So if you're going to enjoy a slice or two occasionally, it's probably okay if you spend the rest of your time eating healthy plant-based foods, including for breakfast. You're going to survive it, and there are ways to actually make bacons less unhealthy. Because, basically what's happening is that fruits, vegetables, legumes, they all raise your shields, they elevate your health defenses, and all those things counter the danger of eating bacon and other processed meats. All right? Okay, now let's talk about dairy. Dairy is a big topic, all right? Because when it comes to breakfast, I always associated when I was growing up dairy products of some sort with my traditional breakfast. Milk in your cereal, milk in your oatmeal, cream in your coffee, anyone? All right. And if you live in Europe or you travel to Europe on vacation, you'll notice in a hotel that they, for breakfast, they'll usually have an area with a glass dome over it where they're actually offering cheese, a couple of slices of cheese. Havarti, anyone? Gouda, anyone? Mozzarella, anyone? All right. And so those are all dairy products. What about yogurt? Yogurt's a common breakfast food, right? If you go to the Mediterranean, like if you go to Greece, for example, yogurt is always on the offer. Whole yogurt is always on the offer. So let's take a look at each of these dairy products to see if they are healthy or not for breakfast. Let's talk first that dairy products are beneficial because they are a source of calcium and they're a source of protein, which your body needs. All right, so that's good. Milk, for example, is also fortified by milk producers with vitamin D, along with the calcium, and that's required for bone health. So milk's good for bone health because of the vitamin D. Now, I'll tell you, I once went to a milk plant where the milk was milk from cows, and it went through this production line, and I was walking along with the owner of this milk plant, watching it being pasteurized and moved along and then loaded into bottles and then capped. And when we were on our way out the door, my host said, "Hey, So now you know how we make milk. Is there anything else you want to see? And I thought, can you tell me, like, where does vitamin D get added? He's like, oh, I didn't know that you're interested in that. Sure, come on, let's go back and check it out. So right before the bottle was actually capped and sealed, the milk went through a kind of a passageway where there was a little squirter, a pipette they called it, just squirted in vitamin D right in. Then it was sealed, boom, ready to be shipped and sold. All right, so that's actually how vitamin D actually gets into your milk.
Hey there, just a quick note. I have another free resource I want to share with you. It's my favorite on-the-go summer ingredients. Now, for a lot of us, summertime is all about relaxing and getting some pleasure. So whether you're simply venturing into your backyard or traveling across the country or even beyond, here are some practical ways to help you stay on track when it comes to using food as medicine. I put together a list of foods that you can find in the aisles of your local market and even in gas stations along the highway and in small towns. This road trip and camping friendly list of foods is available right now for free in the caption below. Now, let's get back to the video.
Now, the other thing about milk is that it's a good source of protein. We talked about protein. And protein is really important as we age. Like after the age of 40, our muscle starts to break down. It's a process called sarcopenia. Sarco is referring to muscle. Penia is like less of it. So when we're younger, we tend to build muscle. As we get older, sort of the second half of our life, we tend to lose muscle. So you want to actually keep your muscle up. You need to actually have protein because muscle is made out of protein, and milk is one of those sources. So milk is actually good for protein. It's a good source of protein if you actually want to look at a source of protein. Now, milk also has fat in it, mostly saturated fat. Whole milk is about 25 to 35% fat. Reduced milk is 2% fat. You've probably seen 2% milk, that's reduced fat. And low-fat milk is 1%. And you can, by the way, taste it. 1% low-fat milk is kind of watered-down milk. 2% milk tastes a little bit better, but nothing tastes as kind of robust as whole-fat milk. So, we generally recommend people to have lower-fat milk, less saturated fat, all right? But whole milk always tastes better. Now, the one thing that you might need to know is that milk also has some natural trans fats that are found in dairy. And these trans fats, actually, when it's in dairy, actually, we think that they're probably not harmful for you. They might even be beneficial for you. But just so you know that milk is also a source of natural trans fats. Now, you can also get some healthy fats like omega-3s in milk. Not a lot, but you get some. And if you want your milk to have healthy omega-3s, you got to actually have pasture-raised, grass-fed cows, because that's where the cows actually get their omega-3s from plant-based sources of omega-3s, and then the cow puts it in as omega-3s into your milk. Grazing naturally in the pasture, the cows get more of these aminolevulinic acid, or ALAs, which is the precursor for omega-3s, and then the cow turns it into omega-3 and pops it right into the milk, which then goes into our commercial milk products. So it's just something to know in terms of the fats that are actually in milk. Now, there are some carbs in milk as well. Milk actually tastes a little bit sweet, right? Milk has lactose. About 5% of the milk contains lactose. And once you drink lactose, which makes milk sweet, it gets broken down into glucose and galactose. So that's just metabolism in your body. You drink milk, it's got lactose. Our human bodies break it down into glucose and galactose. And then our body needs a glucose, by the way, and then your liver will take the galactose and break it down into glucose, and then we have more glucose from it. Now, carbs in milk, okay, the glucose and the galactose are a form of energy, and that's energy, that's fuel for us. Now, don't think about this from an adult perspective. We don't want glucose and spiking glucose and all that kind of stuff. Think about what milk is meant for. Milk is meant for babies, right? Newborns. And what do newborns need? They need a ton of energy, because their metabolism skyrockets. I wrote about this in my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, that human metabolism between the ages of 0 and 1 year old, it skyrockets like a rocket ship. In fact, at 1 year old, a baby's metabolism is 20% higher than adults' metabolism. All right. So a lot of good things that are happening in that first year of life. And that's really why when you're drinking milk, naturally breastfed babies, all right, what's actually happening is that they're using that energy and really doing everything they need with that energy. So milk has fats, it has carbs. And so what are the benefits of milk? All right. Are there any benefits of milk? Number one, milk can actually help build bone density. It's got calcium, it's got vitamin D. Our body uses the vitamin D and the calcium, then puts it right into our bone. As you know, women who are getting older, they can actually have osteoporosis. That's weakening of the bone. That's less calcium in the bone. Brittle, the bones become brittle. And by the way, if you've been on estrogen replacement therapy for many, many years, it can also make your bones brittle as well. So women are on estrogen replacement therapy should make sure they're actually addressing bone health. And milk with calcium and vitamin D actually can be one way of actually helping to support bone health. The other thing is that milk's been shown to lower blood pressure. Now, this is a clinical study that researchers at Wageningen University in the Netherlands, they studied 2,245 people that were 55 years and older. So these are sort of people in the second half of their lives and didn't have high blood pressure at the very beginning. All right. So these are people without high blood pressure. And these researchers followed people over 2 years. And what they found is that those people who were drinking milk or having milk products were up to 39% less likely to develop high blood pressure. Milk drinkers were 39% less likely to develop high blood pressure. And specifically, they found it was milk that was benefiting, creating this, associated with this benefit, not cheese. It was the milk that was actually beneficial. And in fact, even after 6 years, all right, so they followed them over 2 years, and it was milk that prevented, it looks like it was suppressive of developing hypertension. But after 6 years, the reduced risk of developing hypertension or high blood pressure was 20% for milk drinkers. All right, this was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Now, as I mentioned to you, lower blood pressure lowers the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. High blood pressure is the silent killer. So lowering blood pressure is a really, really good thing. Now, having milk. What about in coffee? Should you put milk in your coffee? Is that a good way to actually have your milk? Well, I would tell you no. And I would tell you why. Coffee is really, really good for your health. It slows down cellular aging. It's good for gut health. It's good for your metabolism. The chlorogenic acid, which is one of the bioactives in coffee, cuts off the blood supply to tumors. Good for your stem cells as well. So coffee is sort of like what I call a grand slammer. It really hits the ball out of the park to benefit your body's health defenses. And when you drink coffee black, you get all of those bioactives that get absorbed through your stomach into your bloodstream. Okay. Now, what happens when you put dairy in it? Milk. Tastes good, cuts the strong acidic flavor a bit, mellows out the coffee, milk or cream. But here's the problem. The fat in dairy from milk or cream forms little tiny soap bubbles. These little tiny soap bubbles are called micelles, spelled M-I-C-E-L-L-E-S, micelles. And these little soap bubbles actually trap the chlorogenic acid. All right, so now you've got a lot of these little milk, dairy, fat soap bubbles that are trapping the bioactives. When you drink that coffee, for example, the soap bubbles tumble down through your gut, and it prevents your stomach from absorbing some of the bioactives. All right, so you don't absorb as many of the good bioactives as you would if you drink coffee straight. So that's one of the reasons why, even if you enjoy milk, don't use it in your coffee. If you want to get everything you want to get, that you can get out of it, the bioactives out of coffee. Now, what's a substitute for that if you just really want to cut that coffee, the acidity of your coffee? Well, it turns out that nut milks, soy milks, completely fine. Oat milks, perfectly fine for cutting your coffee. That is actually a good one. It doesn't form the soap bubbles and it doesn't interfere with the absorption of the chlorogenic acid. All right, so we talked about milk as a dairy for breakfast. What about cheese? I know that you might not be eating cheese for breakfast, but I can tell you a lot of people do eat cheese. Like I mentioned that European breakfast buffet with the cheese in there. And you got to know this, that cheese isn't the villain that everyone assumes it is. True, cheese has a lot of salt. True, cheese has a lot of saturated fat. But here's the thing you might not have realized. Cheese is a probiotic food, all right? Cheese is made with healthy bacterial starters that then start to ferment and natural bacteria grow. That's how cheese is actually created. And in fact, cheese has its own microbiome, healthy bacteria in the cheese that we eat, and it contributes to our gut's own healthy bacteria. So we talk about, gut health, and we want to eat fermented foods like kimchi and yogurt, and cheese is actually one of them. But there is a caution with cheese because it has so much salt, it has so much saturated fat. But I want to actually give you some of the upsides to cheese as well. So again, this is not villain versus hero, good versus evil. There's somewhere in between. Cheese made from the milk of grass-fed cows also, guess what? Have omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for our overall health, lowers inflammation, good for our stem cells and metabolism. All right, omega-3s are actually good for us. Now, just because cheese is loaded with saturated fat, there was this concern that eating cheese might be associated with higher risk of heart disease. Makes a lot of sense, right? That's what I would have thought. But in fact, multiple clinical studies in people and cheese eaters have shown that eating modest amounts of cheese, that's up to 200 milligrams of cheese a day, all right, is not linked with a higher rate of heart disease. There's something maybe protective about cheese. We don't understand everything about it, but eating up to 200 grams of cheese a day doesn't seem to increase your risk of heart disease. Doesn't say that it protects you from heart disease, but actually it doesn't increase it if you have modest consumption of cheese. So people say, well, what's 200 milligrams per day of cheese? It's about 10 slices of cheese, all right? I don't eat 10 slices of cheese a day. I don't recommend that you eat 10 slices of cheese a day, but it just shows you our body's pretty resilient, and cheese isn't necessarily harmful for you. In fact, it actually gives you some probiotic benefits, and maybe those probiotic benefits counter the harm of saturated fat. This is an area of research that's actually being done. So cheese, tasty, might have some benefits. I wouldn't call it a healthiest breakfast food, but it's commonly consumed and it has some upsides to it as well. Now, let's talk about yogurt. I love yogurt. Yogurt is a fermented food as well. Yogurt's fermented, from milk. And clearly yogurt is probiotic. All right, it's good for gut health because of the healthy bacteria. And by the way, almost immediately when you eat yogurt, it actually gets your gut to grow more of that healthy bacteria that you need. Good gut health means good brain health, means good heart health, means good immune health. And this is what yogurt actually does. In fact, you want to see yogurt growing healthy bacteria like Akkermansia, like bifidobacteria. These are just the names of some of the healthy bacteria that are good in our gut, protective of our immune health, our brain health. And in fact, a bacteria like Akkermansia can be cancer fighting as well. Now, there's always lactobacillus, which is also another class of healthy bacteria that is also found in yogurt. Now, multiple studies have shown that eating yogurt reduces all-cause mortality. That means death from anything, all right? And in fact, an analysis of 235,000 people across 8 clinical trials found that eating yogurt was associated with a 13% reduction of mortality. That's death from cardiovascular disease. 13% reduction in mortality or death from cardiovascular disease from eating yogurt. All right, so yogurt is healthy, good for gut health. And so then the question is, should you eat whole yogurt or low-fat yogurt? Now, most of us are used to the instinct of reaching for the low-fat yogurt if you're buying yogurt. But I'm telling you, now we actually know the health solution is actually to have whole yogurt, all right? And I'll tell you why whole yogurt is better. Because even though whole yogurt has saturated fat, it's got all those healthy bacteria in it as well. But here's the problem with low-fat yogurt. When yogurt manufacturers remove the fat from whole yogurt to create low-fat yogurt, it collapses the yogurt into basically thin milk, right? So you know how low-fat milk tastes like watered-down milk? Well, if you remove fat from yogurt, it's basically like ultra-watered-down thin yogurt. It doesn't taste very good. The mouthfeel, what your expectation of eating yogurt doesn't feel really normal, good. And so what happens is that the manufacturers are adding emulsifiers, thickeners into the yogurt to bring it back to give you that mouthfeel. Now, this is the problem because researchers are now finding that emulsifiers that are commonly used in yogurts and thickeners for a lot of things, pre-made gravies and things like that, that these emulsifiers, the thickeners, actually profoundly damage your gut microbiome, profoundly damage it. They change your healthy gut bacteria so they're not so healthy, all right? And in fact, this was pioneered by a group that from the University of Paris and Georgia State University. They found in 2021, that's when the evidence first started coming out. Wait a minute, these emulsifiers actually damage the gut microbiome. So what do you think happens when the gut microbiome is damaged? Well, healthy gut bacteria in our body lowers inflammation. So when you damage the gut bacteria, inflammation goes up. Healthy gut bacteria helped us to process, streamline our lipids, our blood cholesterol. When you damage the gut bacteria, cholesterol goes up. All right. This is why low-fat yogurt actually doesn't lower your cholesterol. Actually, your cholesterol actually might go up with low-fat yogurt. And then the other thing, when you damage your gut bacteria, guess what? Your immune system isn't as well nurtured by your gut bacteria. And because the gut text messages your brain, your mood might not also be as good as you would like it to be. And so this is what the research is doing right now, is really taking a look at that gut-brain connection, gut-immune connection, gut metabolism connection, and finding we don't want to damage our gut microbiome. So if you are actually trying to buy yogurt, get whole yogurt. Whole Greek yogurt, for example, is absolutely best. And I will tell you, don't buy the type of yogurt that's prepackaged with a layer of jelly or fruit or whatever prepackaged into it. Please, just get whole yogurt and add your own stuff to it. Because when you take a look at the prepackages, that jelly layer, it's actually, like jelly. Read the ingredient packaging. There's added sugar. There's pectin. There's all kinds of other stuff. And that fruit wasn't made by the factory. They bought it from someplace else. That's ultra-processed foods. And now you've actually got a yogurt that's actually good for you, and you've made it a little bit less good for you. Instead, do it like the Greeks do, all right? I was doing some research recently, and I was just in Greece, and I enjoyed amazingly healthy, delicious whole Greek yogurt for breakfast. Posted something on Instagram on it, some of my experience of how to do it. I'll tell you what I did. I got plain Greek yogurt, and I added some sprinkles of chopped nuts, pistachios, walnuts, almonds. Then I added some dried fruit. Okay, so I might have some golden raisins or dried cranberries. I added some seeds like pumpkin seeds or sesame seeds on top of that. Then I had some cut fresh fruit, kiwis or mango or strawberries, put it on top of there. Amazing. Maybe some citrus, chop up some citrus little bits. And then if I wanted some extra sweetness, now in Greece, they put honey on it. So we would actually cut honey from basically a side of the honeycomb would come right out. We'd actually cut a little piece off and put it right into the yogurt. Amazing. And honey actually has bioactives in it that's also healthy for you as well. How do we know honey is actually good for us? Well, researchers at the University of Illinois in Urbana did a clinical study involving 25 healthy men and gave them something called buckwheat honey. Okay, and buckwheat honey that was in water or tea, they found that there's antioxidant property that goes from eating the antioxidants in the honey, and it gets absorbed into the bloodstream. All right, after drinking 2 cups of honey water containing buckwheat honey, it increased the antioxidant properties in the blood by 7%. All right, just eating some buckwheat honey. So again, honey onto your yogurt, it's a beneficial addition. And if you want to get buckwheat honey, check out where you can actually order it in a store. You can usually find it in the middle aisle section of the grocery store or order it online. So let me go back and say, eat the whole yogurt, stay away from the low-fat yogurt. And if you have any doubt whether or not there's any emulsifiers in your yogurt, pick it up and look for these names, okay? Look for emulsifiers like polysorbate 80 or carboxymethylcellulose or carrageenan. All right, these are just examples of emulsifiers that you might spot, but the whole yogurt doesn't have that. The plain yogurt doesn't have that at all. Now, we've gone through a lot of foods, a lot of aspects of the food, so let me kind of sum up. Oatmeal and eggs, thumbs up. Bacon, thumbs down. Dairy, like milk, cheese, yogurt, depends. Yogurt is good, but get it whole yogurt. Add anything in toppings onto it yourself. Milk and cheese in moderation only. All right, that's it. Hope you learned something from watching this video before breakfast. Thanks for watching.
Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out, and I'll see you there.